Talofalava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Koroi Hawkins. Coming up, Palau's president sets his expectations for Taiwan's full participation in this year's Pacific Forum Leaders Summit.
We respect each other's sovereignty, and I hope that that is clear to the Solomon Islands.
Also, cocaine in Norfolk Islands.
We believe it's washed up. We don't believe there's anything untoward from Norfolk Island, but investigations are continuing.
And in Super Rugby Pacific, can Moana Pasifika bounce back from humiliation in Hamilton, or will they be crushed by the Canes in Wellington? Palau's president strongly opposes any meddling by China at this year's Pacific Islands Forum Leaders meeting in Solomon Islands. Following a state visit to Taiwan, Sorangel Whips Jr., one of the few Pacific leaders still supporting Taiwan, says if Taiwan cannot attend or is restricted in its participation, then the conference must be relocated. His comments come after Solomon Islands Prime Minister Jeremiah Manele recently publicly reaffirmed his government's commitment to the One China policy after staving off two leadership challenges in the last 4 months. Lydia Lewis spoke with Sorangel Whips Jr. and started off by asking him whether he's felt any pressure to switch allegiances from Pacific Forum leaders, the majority of whom support China and several of whom not too long ago were themselves friends with Taiwan.
In the forum, it's very clear that we respect each other's sovereignty, and I hope that that is clear to the Solomon Islands and to every other member of the forum, that we respect everybody's sovereignty, and their own bilateral relations are their own. And as foreign countries, for example, Palau will be hosting PIF in 2026. China, as a dialogue partner of the forum, will come to PIF in Palau because they're a dialogue partner, and that's the way it should be, because my relationship with China has nothing to do with PIF, because PIF as an entity has its own relationships, and those should be respected. So I think that's the way we operate in that space. So yeah, next year everybody's welcome in Palau, and that's how we operate.
This year, though, there have been some concerns around the way China has influence in politics in Solomon Islands. Were those concerns raised at all in Taiwan? And have you raised, or do you have any concerns around Taiwan's accessibility at the forum?
Well, I would expect that Taiwan has full accessibility because this is a PIF event. It's not a Solomon Islands event. If it's a Solomon Islands event, I totally understand, but it's a PIF event. So if any participant cannot get to the Solomon Islands that should be there, and they're denied for any reason, then that country, Solomons or Palau, should be denied hosting PIF, because this is not about Palau's relationship with China or Solomon Islands' relationship with Taiwan. It's about the PIF, and the PIF recognizes both. And within the PIF, we of course have our differences, but we come together as one Pacific.
Do you have those assurances from the Secretariat and from the government of Solomon Islands?
Do I have the assurances? That is my understanding, but there is some, we've heard that there's been some difficulty in Taiwan gaining access. So the high-level representation that's going around interviewing the Pacific leaders from the forum, the three that we've asked, I made it very clear, Palau's position, and to relay it back to Solomon Islands. Of course, Jimmy Rogers was here representing Melanesia, and I just reiterated how important it is that all our partners are able to be present at PIF. And this is a PIF event. It is not a Solomon Islands event. And the same treatment in Solomon should be the same treatment when it happens in Palau, which means we are open to all countries to come to Palau.
Where did those concerns stem from? Following your trip to Taiwan, were concerns raised and were you asked to make it clear the position?
I wanted to make sure that was clear because I saw in the newspaper recently, I think it was May 19th or so, that the Prime Minister emphasized the one China policy and no longer the one China principle. And that raised concern to me that maybe his position has changed. And so I wanted to make it clear that what does that mean to us in the Pacific? Is that a signal to us in the Pacific that he's changed his position? And I want to make sure that our understanding is very clear. That's what I wanted the members of the team that were here visiting, that to make sure that PIF is doing all that it's responsible to do to make sure that this PIF conference is a success and everybody's there that's supposed to be able to participate.
And if Palau does get wind that Taiwan will not have full access or access at all, would you attend this meeting?
Well, I think if, let's say that scenario that for some reason they cannot attend, then I think it's up to PIF to relocate the conference. It shouldn't go to the Solomon Islands. That's the way it should be. It's not about us not attending. It's about Solomon Islands can no longer host. It needs to go to another place. If you cannot fulfill the obligations for PIF, then you should not host. That's the way I look at it. I think this is something, I mean, when I met with Manelli, when I was there for the tuna sustainability, was earlier this year, I was saying it was great to see 17 out of the 18 leaders in Tonga. That's the record. We've gotten back together. Let's ensure that continues, because that's what we need to see. And so if there's countries that have issues, if Solomon Islands feel strongly that because now they have a one China policy and China tells them that a country should be kept out, of course, ultimately it is the Solomon Islands, but they have to remember that it is a PIF event. So if that's the case, then they should say, we can't host the event because we cannot fulfill the obligations required under PIF. And they need to let us know that now.
In response to RNZ Pacific's requests for comment on PIF attendance this year, a spokesperson from the Office of the Prime Minister of Solomon Islands said the government is not in a position to comment on participation or related arrangements for the 2025 Pacific Islands Foreign Leaders Summit. They also say the registration process for the summit has not opened yet and formal invitations will be issued in due course. RNZ Pacific has also requested comment from the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat. In response to recent accusations of meddling in Solomon Islands politics, China's embassy in Honiara said the allegations were baseless. In a curious case on Norfolk Island, a package believed to contain about 40 kilograms worth of cocaine has washed up on shore. It was found by tourists on Tuesday afternoon at Anson Bay. Caleb Fotheringham has more.
Sergeant Mark Watson, the officer in charge of Norfolk Island Police Force, says the barnacle-covered package has generated quite a bit of community interest.
Once notified, we went down and we located the package, and it appeared to contain smaller packages, so about 40 packages inside, which we believe to be cocaine, and we believe it's about 40 kilograms worth.
Norfolk is home to just over 2,000 people sitting between New Zealand and Australia in the South Pacific. Mr. Watson has been living on the island for years and says it's the first time he's seen anything like this.
We believe it's washed up. We don't believe there's anything untoward from Norfolk Island, but investigations are continuing.
Does Norfolk Island get used as a drug trafficking avenue to Australia?
Not to my knowledge.
Local Rail Dondi is just as surprised.
As far as I'm aware, this has never happened before. So we're pretty shocked about this. We woke up to this news this morning and I thought, oh my God, you know, Norfolk Island is such a pristine environment and virtually drug-free, and to find drugs on the beach just shows how Norfolk Island is not immune from drug smugglers.
Like Sergeant Watson, he doesn't think Norfolk is being used as a drug drop-off point.
There's barnacles growing on the netting around the drugs. So it seems like this was just a random situation. It just happened to wash up on Norfolk Island as opposed to New Zealand or the Australian mainland.
Another local, Brett Sanderson, says the community is shocked.
This is stuff you see on TV that happens somewhere else, or maybe there's a drug bust in Australian waters where a trawler or something is intercepted, but it always happens somewhere else.
He also doesn't think the island is being used for transshipping drugs.
We're 8 by 5 kilometres, so there are not a lot of secrets here.
A spokesperson for the Australian Federal Police says investigations into the source of the drugs are continuing, including liaising with international partners. The Norfolk Island Police Force are asking the community to report any further sightings of suspicious packages, but not to handle them.
Next week, experts will gather in Auckland to discuss how to cope with devastating health impacts in the Pacific that are due to climate change. The symposium is being held at the University of Auckland by Te Pautoko Ora Akiwa, the Centre for Pacific and Global Health, with participants coming from around the Pacific. Centre Director Roni Nashu says climate change is driving up temperatures in the islands and the heat is a silent killer. She told Don Wiseman they look at the health impacts of climate change in the Pacific Islands and share potential solutions.
So our conference theme around climate health in the Pacific region sort of speaks to trying to think about the Pacific region and Pacific researchers and providing important contribution to unlocking not just Pacific health solutions, but also global solutions related to climate change. We see this as an important aspect of the work that we do as a centre to amplify and uplift the research and the learnings that is coming out of the Pacific region that also can be of use to other countries and other regions around the world.
We've known for years about the environmental impacts from climate change, but your group would say that there have been very significant health effects already. What sort of things?
We can see that climate-related impacts include NCD. So when we think about the Pacific region, we think about two crises. One is climate change, but the other is NCDs. And this is a result of over-reliance on ultra-processed imported food and the impact that global warming and climate change is having on sustainable agricultural practices, and also in the ability to provide nutritious food by Pacific people for the region. The other thing is dengue fever. So we can see that as a result of climate change, that there's been an increase in vector-borne infectious diseases. Dengue is the current example that we have, and this is because the climate is producing more breeding grounds and warmer weather longer. We can also see that there's been intense cyclones that are happening quite often, and this actually is a real problem because it affects the development gains that Pacific communities and countries have made. So for example, I think from our last analysis of the cyclones that happened in Fiji, Cyclone Winston, that was estimated to cost around $480 billion US. So with so many frequent cyclones that are more intense, Pacific communities can't necessarily catch up to rebuilding or building better, particularly around their water, sanitation and hygiene facilities. So we can see the significant effects too of climate on wash utilities and outcomes. The Pacific region has the lowest levels of access to clean water as a result. There's quite a number of impacts. We need to be researching into these areas a lot better to understand how communities themselves are dealing and adapting and mitigating these factors as a place of strength and resilience. But at the same time, we also need to be part of that conversation globally around how do we get big countries who are emitting the most greenhouse gases to do their bit in terms of global climate. So things around climate justice and equity are really, really important. but it's a conversation that needs to be had with everyone globally and not just people from the region.
Yes, one remarkable thing that I've seen is the number of people in the Pacific dying of heat stroke in the last 20 years. And this is quite a significant number.
Yeah, so I think as part of the symposium, we are launching the inaugural Lancet Countdown Small Island Developing States report. And in there, this is one of the key findings where I guess mortality or deaths attributed to heat have increased. I'm not sure if you're familiar with, is the fact that those deaths are happening mostly with babies, so children under the age of 1, and then those who are a little bit elderly, or our wisdom holders, as we like to say, who are 65 years and older. And so, we have the Pacific that is seen as vulnerable, and then the most vulnerable, which are our children and our elderly, are at the highest risk of climate impacts.
Countries like New Zealand and Australia, are they doing enough in terms of preparing the region for this threat that's already here?
I would say no. I think more could be done. I know that, well, I'm speaking about New Zealand. Australia does put a lot of money into development assistance for the Pacific region. But at the moment, that is sort of going towards more geopolitics and security programs. I think we could always be doing better. We could always be doing more. There is also this sort of sense that climate change is going to increase the numbers of people claiming environmental refugee status, but other research we've conducted actually shows that Pacific people want to stay where they are. They just need support in helping them to live in the environments that they currently live in dealing with climate impacts that they really haven't contributed to. So, for example, the Pacific region only contributes 0.03% of greenhouse gases, but are impacted the most.
The centre wants to look at bringing health closer together with the Met Service so that there can be more information readily available to deal with extremes.
One of the things that we are also looking at, and we've seen from our research, is the need to have better surveillance in order to be prepared for climate health risks. So things around infectious diseases, as well as vector-borne diseases like dengue and waterborne diseases, so that if we have a better idea of extreme weather events that are likely to happen, and then layer that on top of health metrics, then we have a better understanding of where we need to be focusing our health intervention and prevention services, particularly for Pacific countries which don't have the same sort of resources that New Zealand or Australia has, for example, in preparing for disasters and extreme weather events.
Can Moana Pasifika end their dream Super Rugby Pacific regular season on a high? Will they be able to beat the Hurricanes at home in Wellington on Saturday night and consolidate their top 6 spot? And have they recovered from the 85-7 humiliation they suffered at the hands of the Chiefs in Hamilton last weekend? Tough questions and telling ones, especially with the North Harbour-based franchise club 1 win away from sealing history and claiming their first playoff appearance since their debut in 2022. Senior sports journalist Elias Atora, who's been following Moana Pasifika throughout the season, has more.
Moana Pasifika player Jackson Garden-Bachop says the players have had to flush out last weekend's disappointing loss to the Chiefs as they turn their focus to the Hurricanes this week. Bachop says taking on the Hurricanes at home will not be easy, but they will give it their best shot.
Well, you have to move forward pretty quickly because we've got another tough game this week against the Canes, but that definitely stung. It was a quiet bus ride home, but we just had to review it quickly, look at ourselves on Monday especially, and then try and flush it and get onto the Canes. There's a big Pacifica community down in Wellington, so hopefully they turn out and make some noise for us. Obviously a few Welly boys, a few ex-Hurricanes in the team here that'll be excited to get down there and play well.
A former Hurricanes player himself, Bachop is named on the bench for the game, and he says Moana Pasifika will have to be tuned in mentally and physically if they are to beat the hosts, who have been impressive in their last few matches, including last weekend's 31-27 win over the Reds in Brisbane.
They've been looking awesome. They play a really expensive game. Their defence have been really strong, and they've got some real weapons at the breakdown that'll try to put us under pressure there, so we've got to be on. The thing we talked about is the weekend wasn't an anomaly for us. We've been playing really well. So we didn't become a bad rugby team overnight. So there's a couple of things that we had to look at around our mindset. So we still have belief in what we've been doing because it's been working all season until the weekend.
teammate Tom Savage supports Bachop's call.
We just focus on the positive things that have been great for us all year, and we go back to that. Not a case of reinventing the wheel for us. Hopefully that's an anomaly in the results of this season, when we'll go forward this weekend and prepare as best we can. We set out from the off at the start of the year, and that's the position we wanted to put ourselves into. We've had some awesome first times for us and blocks over this season, so hopefully this can be another one for this group.
The Englishman says he and his mates will have to dominate the collisions and stop the Hurricanes from recycling fast balls.
If you're not getting the dominant collisions, they get fast ball. They've got exciting players that can cause you trouble. So it all stems from that. If you don't have the ability to slow them down in the collision, whether that's in the process of the tackle or in the breakdown, they're going to get fast ball. We know the areas we need to focus on ourselves, and like I said, we've drawn a line under that and we're looking forward.
Meanwhile, Hurricanes centre Billy Proctor says his former teammate and Moana Pasifika captain Adi Savea will receive a special welcome and have a lot of support when the two teams battle on Saturday night.
You've got a guy there who's won the player of the season with 2 rounds to go, so his performances week in, week out have been exceptional, and he's born and bred from Wellington, and I'm sure he's going to have a lot of friends, family, cousins, brothers there supporting him, so he deserves that respect and he deserves that welcome.
Hurricanes assistant coach Brian Evans says they respect Moana Pasifika and know their visitors will be a tough challenge that the hosts will have to be ready for.
No, we want to finish as high up the table as we can, so we're guns blazing this week, and we have to be against a Moana side that's dangerous and is a very good team. We'll definitely give Moana the respect they deserve. They've put in a number of good performances, and they've got players that are playing and putting their hand up throughout the season, so they're coming here in form, we think, and we have to be ready for that.
Moana Pasifika needs a bonus point win to secure their 6th spot and a playoff berth. The Blues, who are at 7th at the moment, and 8th place Waratahs are both also in contention for the 6th position on the competition standing.
That's Pacific Waves for today. For all episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, tō whāsoi fua.